And today we wanted to talk about housing. So for those that aren't aware that we have a housing crisis, William, what is the problem at the moment with housing?
The main problem is a lack of supply. We just simply don't build enough houses and flats, and we haven't done for many years, and very, very high demand and housing need. Housing need is a little bit different from demand, but basically those two problems have led to a crisis of supply and affordability. So if you look at the metrics of how much housing costs to rent, rents have gone up in the major cities massively, very, very expensive. It's not uncommon for young people in London to spend literally half their disposable income on a small room, which again is an indicator that something isn't quite right. That's true of Manchester and London. And so, if you look at the other side of buying houses, the affordability of houses in terms of a comparison of the price to income, again, has gone sky high. So if you go back 30 years, 40 years ago, you could actually buy a house for something like 4 times your salary, your annual salary. You can't do that. You're nowhere near being able to do that. And in London, the metric is up to sort of 16 times salary. So it's very, very expensive. So yeah, unless we can, I think people can overcomplicate things at times. And I'm a simple person at heart, and the root cause of the problem is the failure to build enough houses. And there's a sort of prime reason for that, I think, which is the destruction of state sector capacity. And the figures bear me out. It's very simple. In the 50s, 60s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and right into the 70s, the state built a lot of houses, and it very, very often outbuilt the private sector. We haven't done that since 1970, and the sector's been allowed to basically wither on the vine to the extent now we've only basically got one sector building housing at scale, and that's the private sector. And the private sector has never built, it's been very, very consistent in how many units it's built. About 180,000 a year is what they build. And but what we've lost is the state building an equivalent number. So that's the basic reason. And the demand side has been exacerbated by mass immigration, something which many politicians don't want to link to housing, but I think you have to, unless you think new arrivals will literally live in tents or live in thin air.
So why doesn't the free market deal with this? Because if there is this demand for houses, why doesn't the private sector match that demand with the supply?
Well, the first reason is the size of the sector. It doesn't have a capacity to build 300,000 or 400,000 houses in a year. It's true that if you got rid of all planning control, if you debate people from the IEA or very, very market liberal people on this, they say just get rid of all planning control and then you'll have enough houses. Well, yeah, in theory, in the long run, that would be the case. It would be haphazard and quite inefficient. But is it wise to have no planning control in an island that's got 70 million people? I don't think it's very wise. It's not sensible. And in any case, in the short term, the capacity simply doesn't exist to do that. The private sector couldn't do that if it tried. So I don't think that's the solution. I think you can plan your way out of it, but you've got to rebuild the sector that's missing. And the basic analogy is, the basic thing I say is, it's like a housing sector in the UK is like a bird with one of its wings hacked off, and we wonder why it can't fly. And that's the prime reason. As I say, immigration is another reason for the housing crisis, and it's something which particularly politicians on the liberal left are disinclined to even address. I know that you're speaking from Manchester. Andy Burnham has published his proposals for housing, and they're fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with them, but he doesn't mention the word immigration once, and he's proposing 10,000 new homes in Greater Manchester by 2028, which is, roughly 3,000 a year, which is not particularly dramatic. I mean, if we wanted to get back in business, it would have to be something like that. Probably more are required. But he doesn't mention immigration. He doesn't mention the fact that Manchester is, like many other big northern cities, is a sanctuary city. And I don't think the housing completions he's proposing are even enough to look after migration. So there you go.